Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. You think staying quiet makes you weak. You believe that not defending yourself means you're giving up. That silence equals surrender. But what if I told you that every time you explain yourself, justify your choices, or defend your actions, you're actually giving your power away? Carl Jung understood something most people never realize. Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Today, we're going to explore why silence isn't weakness. It's the ultimate power move. And why the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you, everything in your life shifts. I'm not here to tell you to become cold or disconnected. I'm here to show you the psychological truth that Jung discovered. Most of our explanations aren't really about communication. They're about our desperate need for approval. Last month, I received a message from Emma. She wrote, "I spend hours explaining my decisions to my family, my friends, even strangers. I justify why I chose my career, why I ended that relationship, why I need space. But no matter how much I explain, I never feel understood. I'm exhausted." Emma had fallen into what Jung called the approval trap, the unconscious belief that our worth depends on others' understanding and acceptance of our choices. But here's what Emma didn't realize. The right people don't need your explanations, and the wrong people won't accept them anyway. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." But most of us spend our lives explaining why we deserve that privilege. Let me tell you about David. David is 29, works in marketing, and has a peculiar habit. He explains everything. Why he's vegetarian, why he doesn't drink, why he left the party early, why he chose that book. David thinks he's being considerate, transparent, helpful. But Jung would see something else entirely. David is performing. He's living in what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted by society. Every explanation David gives is actually a plea. Please approve of me. Please validate my choices. Please don't reject me. But here's the brutal truth. When you constantly explain yourself, you're not being authentic. You're being strategic. You're trying to control how others perceive you, which is impossible and exhausting. Jung understood that this compulsion to explain comes from our deepest fear. The fear of being misunderstood, rejected, abandoned. But what if being misunderstood by some people is actually a sign that you're living authentically? The paradox is this: the more you explain yourself, the less people respect your explanations. Because explanations, when they come from fear, sound like excuses. Jung had a concept called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge. And there's a shadow side to our need to explain that most people never see. The shadow of explanation is this: sometimes we explain not to be understood, but to avoid taking responsibility for who we really are. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah explains her life choices constantly, but there's a pattern. She only explains the choices that make her look good. She explains why she volunteers, why she chose organic food, why she meditates. But she never explains why she gossips about her friends, why she's jealous of her sister's success, why she stays in a job she hates because it's safe. These parts of herself get no explanation because they're harder to justify. Jung called this moral superiority, the unconscious need to appear better than we are. And over-explaining can be a subtle form of this. Here's a test for you. Notice which behaviors you feel compelled to explain and which ones you never mention. The difference reveals where your shadow lives. True authenticity isn't about having pure motivations. It's about owning all your motivations, even the messy ones. Jung wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." And when you stop explaining yourself, you force others to think rather than judge. And most people can't handle that. Silence is uncomfortable because it leaves space for projection. When you don't explain your choices, people have to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. And those assumptions reveal more about them than about you. Watch what happens when you stop explaining yourself. First, some people will get uncomfortable. They'll push for explanations, create stories about your motivations, even get angry at your silence. This isn't about you. It's about their need to understand and control everything around them. Second, manipulative people will lose their power over you. Manipulation often works through guilt, and guilt requires explanation. When you stop justifying your choices, you become much harder to manipulate. Third, the right people will respect your boundaries. They'll understand that you don't owe anyone an explanation for living your life authentically. Let me share Marcus's story. Marcus used to explain everything: why he didn't want children, why he spent weekends alone, why he chose to travel instead of buying a house. Then Marcus discovered Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from others' expectations. He decided to stop explaining his life choices. The first few months were difficult. His family accused him of being secretive, selfish, disconnected. But Marcus held his ground. He would simply say, "I've made my choice, and I'm at peace with it." Gradually, something beautiful happened. His family stopped questioning his decisions and started respecting them. Marcus had trained people to relate to him differently, not as someone who needed their approval, but as someone who knew his own mind. When you stop explaining yourself, you develop what Jung called psychological autonomy, the ability to be yourself, regardless of external pressure. Here are the steps to develop this autonomy. Step 1. Recognize your explanation patterns. For 1 week, notice every time you feel compelled to explain yourself. What triggers this need? Whose approval are you seeking? Step 2. Practice the pause. Before explaining, ask yourself, do I owe this person an explanation? Will this explanation serve our relationship, or am I just managing their perception of me? Step 3. Develop standard responses. Instead of lengthy explanations, try, "I've thought about it carefully, and I'm comfortable with my choice." Or simply, "This works for me." Step 4. Embrace the discomfort. People will be confused, frustrated, even angry when you stop explaining yourself. This discomfort is temporary, and it's the price of psychological freedom. Remember, explaining yourself to the wrong people is like trying to convince a fish to climb a tree. It's exhausting for you and confusing for them. The right people will see your choices and think, "I may not understand it, but I trust that you know what's best for you." The wrong people will see your choices and think, "You need to convince me that you're making the right decision." Carl Jung spent his life studying what it means to become psychologically whole, and one of his most profound insights was this: you cannot become whole while seeking approval from fragments of yourself that you've projected onto others. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't respect your autonomy, you're giving them a piece of your psychological sovereignty. You're saying, "Your understanding of me matters more than my understanding of myself." But when you stop explaining, when you trust your inner knowing more than others' opinions, something powerful happens. You become unshakable, not because you're rigid, but because you're rooted in something deeper than external validation. The people who are meant to be in your life will love you without needing explanations. The people who require constant justification for your existence were never really your people anyway. Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Trust that vision. Live from that clarity. And let your life be the only explanation you need." Write in the comments, "I choose inner knowing over external approval." If you're ready to stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you,